Well, this will be a good conversation because drawing is one, it should be fun, and drawing is a good foundation for everything that we do in visual storytelling and with storyboards. Now, there are other methods to communicate your idea because that is really the end goal, is communication. It's not about illustration, and it's not about creating a fancy image and a beautiful masterpiece. What it's really about is communicate an idea with the drawing skills that you have, and it's serving a purpose. So that's why we get into visual storytelling, because it's really about storytelling. It's about the story. And the way we get there, the way we accomplish this is actually using our drawing skills. That's how we do it. So I want to talk a little bit about kind of what I did today and what I've been up to. And then also, let's have a conversation about some of the methods that you are using and maybe some techniques and that kind of thing. Because I'm certainly not the end-all be-all when it comes to drawing techniques and methods. I usually, when I find something that works, I stick to it. And if I don't have to experiment on new things, then I just stick with it. I do like to check out new software and new techniques, and I do geek out about like new tools that are out there. But when it comes to production, like the deadlines are usually so tight, and I just don't have any time to mess around. So I just, once I have my brushes set up, once I have my like template set up, I'll just stick with that. Oh, excuse me. Okay. So, first off, how are you guys? How you doing? Hey, Chad, what's up, my friend? Good to see you on. All right, I see a bunch of people are joining on Instagram too. Great. I'm glad to hear it and see it. Let me talk a little bit about what I did today. And this is just an example of kind of the workflow that I do on a daily basis, and it fluctuates a lot just depending on the type of assignments that I have. But for example, I woke up early, and the first thing I did was I started drawing. I started doing kind of my dojo, what I call my dojo drawings. In fact, let me see if I can bust that out. I got a new sketchbook that a friend gave me, and I've been using it to do some drawings. And so basically, I just, I went to the bodiesinmotion.photo website. If you guys know that site, you should check it out. It's got an amazing platform where you can do figure drawing online, so you don't have to even go anywhere. But let's see, where did I do today? Yeah, so like here, start off with some figure drawings. Let me see if I can move this up. Camera, hello. You can see some of that, just gestural sketches. I think these started out with 2-minute poses. I was like waking up in the morning, so what I was trying to do was just figure out. I wanted to wake myself up to get warmed up, to get flowing with my hand-eye coordination, and I was kind of particularly like focused on the anatomy to figure out where all the bones and muscles and that kind of thing. And sometimes when I do that, what happens is the gesture goes out the window because I'm focusing on like details. So that's not always the best thing. I catch myself too, because like things start to get stiff, and I can see it in my drawing, and then I'm like, okay, well, wait a minute, I completely messed up the gesture. I should have seen that first. That's the overall thing that you should be worrying about. And this is kind of what I wanted to talk about today, is like the method of how you draw a figure and how you draw a background and you create a composition. So there's that. Now I do other things. So I have this another sketchbook. That big sketchbook is nice because I can have it at my desk and I can draw stuff. But I draw stuff big. But I doodle a lot. So check out this page. It's like almost incomprehensible. You can't even tell what's going on sometimes. But I doodle a lot, and let me see, I'll also write down like story notes. Like here's a page where there's a bunch of notes on there, and I'm writing ideas. And can you see that on the other camera? There. So there's like drawings mixed in with notes, and it's just for me. I don't have to show this to anybody. I'm showing to you guys, so you can critique all you want. I kind of like how this page turned out. I just started writing around the drawings that I already made. You can see how it's all like intermixed with figure drawings and stuff. So at any rate, it's just for me. I don't care what anybody else thinks at this point. And the only thing I'm worried about is just to like continue practicing and get myself warmed up, hand-eye coordination, pencil mileage, all that good stuff. Okay. Now, how this applies is when you're creating a composition for your storyboards or your story or anything you're doing, you're gonna have to use gesture drawing, figure drawing, anatomy, perspective, all of the things that we talk about when it comes to classical art skills, and you've applied them to your storytelling, okay? And basically, so there's a technical part to that because you're actually looking at how am I going to compose this shot. You're thinking about cameras and the camera work that you're doing, and that all of that combined is eventually going to produce your image. So I get a lot of questions of like, okay, how do I actually do my process? And we can talk about some of that, and we'll get into the weeds of like how I'm creating things. And everybody's different. So I have my method. You're going to find if you follow other artists and you ask people and other story guys how they do it. Some guys, they like start on one little section of the page or their canvas, and they just start drawing, and just erupts this beautiful image. I don't do that. I have to think about my shot, so I'll rough out my thumbnail. I'll do it really small. If I'm doing it digitally, which is on the computer, I will do it at the full-size resolution, but I actually shrink down my canvas really small on the computer so it looks like I'm drawing a small thumbnail. That way I don't get lost in the details and I'm just drawing big blocky shapes. Okay, and I'm worried about the focal point and the story point. So usually I'm thinking about the shot. Let's say you need a character and he's got to emote something, so you want like a medium close-up. So medium close-up usually means I'll cut somebody like here off of the waist, and then you get like that kind of shot, right? And from like waist up, and you want to make sure you give them enough headroom. That's always really important. And then you also want to place them in the setting and a background. So that's gonna insinuate a perspective and a horizon line, whether the horizon line is up, so your camera height is up, or your camera height is low. And usually I'll start with the focal point of the shot. So if the story point is the guy has to make an expression and react to something that happened in the previous shot, I will compose that face. I usually do a rough, so I'll just like doodle in a circle with a very simplified face in my thumbnail, and I'll block out where the body is and stuff in that composition, and then I'll throw in some background details. Like if he's inside an interior room, you might see like the doorway or a window, maybe some background wall decorations, like some paintings or some drapery or something. Could even be like a table and have like a plant or something like that. So I'll think of some of what the set would look like, what the setting is that this character is in, and also the staging. Is he standing up? Is he sitting down? Is he in motion? All of that. I'll think about that, and so when I actually go down to draw it, I'll usually draw my focal point, the face, the body, and then I'll throw in the background details. The cool thing is, with digital drawings nowadays, is you can separate things out into layers. So that's super easy. You basically draw your character on one layer, and you can just draw through it, right? So there's no need to like pause and like have a gap between where there's an intersection between the shoulder and the background, all of that. You can basically just draw through it. In the background too, you can just go crazy and draw the background, and know that later on you can compose it and actually clean it up so it's all there, right? So that's basically the way I do it. So hopefully you guys can relate to that and it makes sense. Now, if I'm going to do a background and draw something with a little more elaborate, let's say scenery, so you might have a building, you might have like foreground, middle ground, background, so you're gonna have cars and trees and people going by, you have a big composition. That's where you want to really lay out your perspective and understand what the horizon line is doing, how you lay out your grid, where your vanishing points are. And we're going to be talking about all this in a lot of detail because I should say, and we've been planning a drawing and portfolio challenge, which is basically a way that we can all get together and talk about these things, actually participate. So that's coming up in September, or actually that's coming up at the end of August. And so once those dates are there, we'll let you guys know so you can all join in and do some drawings there. So let me check out and see who's on board right now. Whoa, we got Felipe Smith. Oh man, that guy's a monster. What's up, my friend? Good to see you. And all right, and then cool. I love it. This man, Chad, thank you, my friend, for putting this. So Chad on Facebook has an awesome link here from a webpage called, let's see, am I going to pronounce this right? evanerichards.com. It's a fantastic website that has screen caps of films and such that you can use to study compositions. Man, I wish I had that today. I was trying to look for some really good reference for film compositions, and oh, awesome! This is fantastic. So you guys, we'll post that in the notes after the chat here. So that'll be cool. But yeah, thanks for that. This is such a great thing. So the other thing, that's a one thing to mention, is that you should be studying. You should be studying films, right? Look at these things. Look at the compositions. Look at what other people have done before, and see what you can do to inspire yourself. And it's not necessarily copying, but if you have film references and you're doing something in film, which is storyboards, and creating compositions that you want to reference a camera, you have to be looking at what the camera can actually do and represent. So a camera is not like the human eye. The human eye is a lot more sophisticated. There's two eyeballs, so you're actually looking in stereoscopic vision, right? So if you close one eye, you're going to get one view. If you close the other eye, you're going to get another. By putting them together, that's how you get the depth, right? That's how we see. A camera eyeball that's projected on a flat screen is going to have essentially just one camera. Now you can have stereo movies which like 3D, like Avatar and stuff like that. There you get that awesome 3D effect. Not to be mistaken with virtual reality, which is a different thing, right? I'm actually working on that kind of stuff right now, and we can. That's for another discussion because that really does get technical. But the way a camera lens works is it has a narrowing or a widening of a field of view, all right? And that field of view is what you're going to draw. And so if you have a really narrow field of view, you're going to have a telephoto lens, and this is the reason you want to be studying films. Just look at the stuff, and like if you can go to that website and maybe download some of those images or do a screen capture, bring that into a program like Photoshop, put that as your background, and then draw out the horizon line and see where those vanishing points are. Hopefully you understand how to do that, right? You're always going to have a horizon line. That's where your eye level is. That's where the camera is looking. That's your point of view, right? So once you figure that out, you can more or less figure out where the vanishing points are on that horizon line. And the key thing to note there is that a horizon line, you can only have one horizon line at any given time in a film, right? Now, if you have a moving camera shot, your horizon line will move with that camera, right? And you will also, if the camera like moves up and cranes up and you do some kind of lifting camera move or a panning camera move, you can possibly have, a changing horizon line throughout the shot, but that's going over time, all right? Now, why I'm saying this is because you have to understand the perspective and what the camera lens is doing in relation to the way we draw with perspective in order to be able to replicate these shots. And one of the things I was doing today was actually figuring out how to do a 100 millimeter lens versus a 24 millimeter lens, so a wide lens versus telephoto lens, and actually drawing that stuff. So that's something kind of technical, but it is a cool exercise to do. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on like drawing methods and what to do. And I think if you guys have any other methods of doing it, let me know, because I know some people, like I said, will sometimes begin with the background and then they'll start to fill in the character and they'll crop in the frame based on the composition that they want. And that's totally fine. There's no wrong way to do any of this. Really, the end result is what's important, okay? So there is no rule. There's no rules in art, okay? You can copy, you can break the rules. You should be breaking rules. You should push the envelope and make something interesting and cool. And that's really where it's at. You have to be conscious of what came before us in order that you can master the tools and then hopefully push yourself forward and do something really cool and innovative. So whether you draw the background first, whether you crop in, whether you use tools in Photoshop that rotate and scale and move things around, that's totally acceptable. And I know, there's some traditionalists out there that they might say, that's cheating, right? Copying from photo reference, that's cheating. Well, wait a minute. If the grand masters of art did this, right? They had models like Vermeer, who's super grandmaster painter, was using a camera oscura, which is a method of viewing a subject so that it flattens things, right? Look it up. You'll like what you find. That's basically a fancy way of doing like an image projector, right? Or a photo still. That was before photography even existed, okay? Claude Monet used photography, all right? Alphonse Mucha, grandmaster. Look these guys up. They used photography. He used photography to do a lot of his paintings. And then certainly the modern guys, once photography came in there, they use it all the time. They would use figure models, and then they would take pictures of the models and then use it all the time. So I know friends who like take pictures of themselves. Like they'll do a selfie in the mirror and stuff like that, just because they need to get the pose. Animators, what do? They will take out a camera and they'll film themselves acting and bouncing around and doing the shot. And in an animation studio, you see people get up out of their chair and they get into the pose. I often tell people, when you're drawing, you want to feel the pose. You feel it. You feel it in your body. So when you actually get in that, if you got a sword or something, I got my, the sword is mightier than the pen, right? So it's like you get this, you're in that pose. Like, which shoulder is lower? Which shoulder is higher? Like, how's the hip motion? Like, where's the weight falling? Is it on the right foot? Is it on the left foot? All those things, you got to feel it, and then you understand you can be able to relate that in your drawing, okay? So those are things that will help you get through it, and hopefully the more you do this, the more you're going to build up your visual memory, and it's going to get easier and easier over time. So that's why I say there's no wrong way to do it. Another thing that I do, and I'll just say this real quick before we move on to another subject, is like I do multiple rough passes. So I will do a sketch, and then I'll do another sketch, and then I do these on layers. So it's like one layer, then another layer in Photoshop or whatever digital program I'm using, and then I'll just clean it up. And if that one doesn't work, I'll go again. It's like now it's unlimited the amount of layers you can do. Back in the day when I was working on paper, you work on tracing paper. You do one, you put another, you do another drawing, and you put up, you go rough and rough and rough until you finally start honing it down. Now, I know there are guys that are so skilled and they're so awesome. They already know, they can visualize in their head how to do it. They don't have to do that many roughs. In fact, sometimes they just go right into a finished drawing. I can't do that. I don't work well doing that. So I use a blue line pencil, even in a digital program like Photoshop. And, start with black. I'll turn that blue, and then I'll go over that to clean up my line. And whatever works. If I get the result, I'm happy, that's fine. And the result is good storytelling. I'm not worried about the drawing. I'm worried about storytelling, okay? That's important. All right, my friends, let's see. Who's got something to say out here? Yeah, so Jason here is confirming what I'm talking about. Norman Rockwell used a lot of references. Of course, look at the books that these guys have. Their references photographic. But check out the original. If you ever have a chance to see the original Norman Rockwell's and you see what his process was like, he would have figure drawings, he would have a figure model, he would take photographs, compile a bunch of reference, and do a full-size cartoon rough, well, it's not that rough. It's actually a very detailed pencil comp or charcoal comp, full size. So we're talking really large format paintings. He would render the hell out of that and make sure it was as tight. He's solving problems there. He's solving problems in that composition. And that would be his black and white, like essentially rough preliminary composition. Then he would transfer that to his canvas, and he already solved the values. He knew what he was doing. And then he would go in there, and he would do color studies too. And then he goes into the finish, he would do a finished color pass. And that was like his final thing. Probably even then he did it a couple times. So, yeah. Let me see who's chatting here in the chats. All right, well, cool. Let me get to some of these questions that we got here. What's up, Miss Lengua? Hey, Sergio, how close to model should the characters in your animatic be? That's a great question. Let me define that a little bit for you guys who may not understand that question. So when you draw on model, that means you have to be very accurate to the characters that you're drawing in your story or in your project. So most of the time that refers to TV animation or television episodic stuff where the storyboards are going to be used as almost like a blueprint for the animators later on to do their animation poses. So it's a good practice for the story artist to draw on model accurate proportions, accurate body details and costume details to the character in the storyboard panels, even if they're rough. And most of the time, if you have to draw on model, they're not going to be that rough. And that gets passed to the next stage of layout and animation, so that those guys can have a very solid blueprint. So shows like The Simpsons. I did a test on the Marvel Avengers animated TV show. What else have I done that was on model? There's a ton out there, like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I think those guys were drawing on model stuff. Fortunately, I was working. I'm actually not very good at drawing on model characters because I just like to go and draw my own style. I'm faster that way. So it all depends on the production that you're working on. To draw an on model character, the first thing you should do is ask how detailed and how on model your characters have to be. If they just have to have the silhouette and be identified as that character, you can possibly be a little bit looser in your storyboard drawings. And that's great because you have a little more leeway in the way that you draw, and you could probably go faster. Like I said, when I was at Lucasfilm and doing 3D productions, when we did the 2D storyboards, we could be a little bit more, we were allowed to be a little bit faster and looser with the on-model stuff. They didn't have to be that on-model. You had to look like the character, had to be accurate, had to have a nice composition, but you didn't have to fill in all the details and stuff like that. So it really does depend on your production. All right, Joe. Joe is in part of, I think you're referring to the visual story course. All right, my friend, Joe BA. Good to have you in there, and I look forward to seeing the work on there. For those of you guys who don't know what he's talking about, we have an ongoing visual story course that is free. So if you're into the stuff that we're talking about here, might as well go to that course and check out what we're doing. There's a couple of really targeted exercises to boost your portfolio and get you going with your drawings. So that's super cool. Let us know what you're up to, and be sure to post in our Facebook group, Visual Storytellers United, so that we can check out what you're doing and we can share with everybody else. Awesome. So Daniel here is saying online, Daniel Espinoza, I've practiced a lot of drawing boxes and basic 3D figures, and even I can imagine positions and perspective in cubes better. I don't know how to apply it to my drawings. Any advice? Thanks for these streamings. You're welcome, buddy. Yes. So in drawing basic 3D shapes and 3D objects, what you want to get at is you have to understand whether you're looking above the object and looking down on it, or your eye level is low and you're looking up on it. So then the angles will change, even on a box, right? And even on a square, cube, right? In 3D, let's say. That cube, as soon as you understand that camera angle, you're gonna have to translate that into a shape, and a more complicated shape, like a human figure or a face, right? A face, a skull, you can put within a cube, and there are certain landmarks they can use those same angles to translate to those landmarks on the face. So for example, the eyebrows, right? The ridge of the eyebrow is also something that it's pretty solid, right? Now you have expressions like I can put my eyebrow up and down and whatever, right? But for the most part, you can use that as an angle that goes to the horizon line and that locks in the perspective. Bottom of the chin, bottom of the nose, those things like that. The angle of the ears, right? So is it slanted like this? Like if I tilt my head, my ears are slanted. If I'm straight, my ears are straight across, right? My eyeballs are straight across. Hopefully, right? I got one eyeball higher than the other. Who knows, right? At any rate, you're going to be able to, you want to translate that stuff, just the basic geometric shapes, into something more complicated. This takes practice. You have to be able to have enough drawing practice, and this is why I say you got to do it every day. You got to love it. You got to bust out your sketchbook. You got to draw everything imaginable. Doodle, draw from life, create something. Doesn't matter what the result is, you just draw. Eventually what will happen is your visual memory will get better, and you can see things. You can close your eyes and you can visualize it in your head, and then you'll be able to draw it in a 3D view, the characters that you want. And it doesn't come easy, and it's not something that is like, it's something that you have to work at, basically, right? It's what I'm trying to say. So my advice for this is look for reference if you're just starting out. So have a lot of photo reference from all angles if possible. Now, some people have, I don't have it on my desk, but some people use like little maquettes, like a small little model or an action figure that they can pose, and you can look at it in different angles and hold it there and do a little sketch. That helps. That's fine. Whatever works. Like I said, there's no wrong or right way to do this. So that's kind of what you want to do to make it work. The other thing that you can do is use 3D reference. So if you have a program, and this was great because the 3D models that we're using when we're on at Lucasfilm, for example, on Rebels and Clone Wars and Resistance, is like you could open up a 3D package and pose out a model and move the camera in the right camera angle that you wanted, and you could just simply draw that. So that was really great. Or you could even take a screen grab and then draw on top of it. That's another trick. Okay, so there's plenty of ways to do that stuff. Okay, yeah. So let me get to Irwin999 asking about portfolio reviews. You know, we do not have individual portfolio reviews on the site right now. And the reason is because we found it's a little bit easier if we do this in a group setting. One thing that I will say, and I mentioned it at the beginning of this chat, is we are at the end of August, we're going to have a drawing and portfolio challenge. It's essentially a workshop that we're going to get together, and there we're going to review portfolios. So stay tuned. Hold tight for a little bit. In a couple of weeks, we're going to open that up, and then that's where you're going to be able to submit your work, and we can review it. And it's not just going to be me. We're going to have everybody, community mentors, and other people in the Storyboard Art platform going through those portfolios. So if you want some feedback, that's one way to do it. Another thing I would recommend is asking for help or just asking for feedback. In our Facebook United, our Visual Storytellers United Facebook group. It's a mouthful to say. So that would be a good way to do it. You can also email us directly and direct message us. If you want to email us, you can email us at story@storyboardart.org. So that's one way to do it. Yes. The truth is, it's really hard to get honest feedback. And you really need that when you're trying to improve your portfolio, because what happens is you start sending your work out and you send it out to companies, and all of a sudden you hear crickets. They don't get, they may not reply back. They don't even send you an email. Back in the day, they used to send you a mailer that had like a little postcard that said, "Hey, we saw your work, but we're not going to hire you," is basically what it said. But nowadays, you might not hear anything, and that's terrible because you don't actually get the feedback that you need to improve. So one way to do that is just like what you just did, and what others should do is solicit advice from others, and see what kind of response you get. There might be some nuggets in there. You kind of have to filter the responses based on who you're actually asking, but there's some nuggets of feedback that you can take and start adapting your stuff. Right? That's always cool. Awesome. Thanks for putting that into the chat there, Chad. A good resource from Ethan Baker. Has a great video about talking about identifying shapes in reference and other ways you can start applying the shapes first and then building the rest of the subject or composition from it. Yeah, great. I'll look for that, and hopefully you guys can check out those links as well. So Midden has a question here on Instagram. Talk something about international artists in USA. Well, let me see what comes to mind. I think I can kind of guess what you're getting at. So one, we get that question a lot, is one, how does somebody who's outside of the US market break into the US market? So essentially a foreign artist who's trying to land a job in the US, okay? Now things are slightly adjusted with all the COVID pandemic, but I'll give you like general guidelines. And this goes for everybody. The first one is you got to have a network. You have to be connected to these people, and you have to connect with them, send them your work. And the real truth of the matter is you can get a job if you're a foreign artist. There is a way to do it. It is not necessarily easy, but it is possible. And I know many artists that are foreigners that are originally not from the United States that have worked in the United States or are working in the United States. They have visas. They give you the proper paperwork and everything that you need to do to get the job. If you have the skills that they need, still most of the time, artists, especially talented and capable story artists, are still high in demand, and that is really the truth. And so if you have the skills and you're able to show them that you can fulfill the need that they have in the production, then they'll give you a shot. Excuse me. They'll give you an opportunity to work. Now, one interesting tidbit, now that we're in this kind of corona pandemic, is a lot of studios are moving to the remote work kind of setup. So that actually opens the doors to more people getting these jobs, because you don't necessarily have to move to the United States to work at a U.S. company. And there's probably a bunch of paperwork that you have to do. You're probably going to just be a contractor and work on a freelance basis to begin with. So a staff position might be a little bit harder to go at if you're international, so to speak. But it is possible. So to kind of summarize what you need to do is, first you need to connect with these people and know that who's hiring and who's looking for artists, right? The next thing you do is you need to have a really strong portfolio. This kind of goes for everybody, but you need to have a really strong portfolio and show them that you can fulfill the need. The next thing you want to do is get, as much as possible, connect with these guys, show them that you can do the work. They're going to hopefully give you a test or hire you to do some initial work, maybe on a freelance basis, or maybe they just do a test or something like that. At any rate, you kill it. You prove to them you're awesome, okay, and that you can really do the work. And then that way, they'll give you the opportunity to join up on the production. Now, that doesn't happen overnight. It's not exactly a straightforward thing, but that's one of the ways that it happens. If you prove to them, you actually connect, and you actually do the work, then that's the way that they're going to ask for more and more work. Because once they have somebody that's reliable, once they know you're good, and they know that you can solve their problem on the production, they're going to call you over and over again. So that's what happens when you get guys who actually come to the United States. They work for a while. They do really well because they're kicking ass, and they're doing awesome work for the companies that they're working for. And then they might leave and go back to their home country, and then the guys are still calling. They're still in contact with them, and they might call them up and have them continue to work. So that's one thing that is good. All right. Cool. So a couple of follow-up questions here. This one is from Baskar. Tell me about camera angles, how to use in storyboarding. That's kind of a general question. I think happy to answer that. Let me see if I can sum that up, because that's a big topic. Okay, so as I gather my thoughts here, every shot that you're going to create in a storyboard needs to reference a camera, because it's the point of view of your audience. It's the eyeballs of your audience. And that really is important to understand. So the basics is the camera, is the eye level, is the viewing angle up high or down low? Okay, that's the first thing. Or eye level, right? Maybe your eye level to the subject. And this is how you're supposed to use the camera angles. Now, you also want to do interesting camera angles and interesting compositions. So, but the basic is either you have a high angle shot or you have a low angle shot. And at that, back to what we're talking about here in this discussion today, is like, is your horizon line high or is your horizon line low in the composition? And that's the perspective drawing coming in. Then what you want to do is make sure you have an interesting composition where you have foreground, middle ground, and background, and that you're showing something really cool and interesting visually. That's the visual communication that you want to do. So having really interesting camera angles is absolutely fundamental to anything that we do in storyboards. It's not enough to just have a scribble and an expression and it's done, and it's in like a snowfield with no background. That's really, it's not enough anymore. You can't get by as a pro story artist doing that kind of work. You have to really show the camera angle, what the background set should be like, and everything else that fills in the shot. That's really what you got to be doing. Okay. Another good question here from Irving to follow up is, how often do you move for your job? What's the best place to stay to avoid this? I hate moving. I think we all hate moving. But, I hate moving when it comes to like packing up boxes and that kind of thing. But moving for work is actually, that doesn't bother me. I've done that a lot because it's temporary. You go on the job, you might, back in the day before the coronavirus, you would stay in hotels and you'd be on the production, you'd be on the set, or maybe you'd work at the studio for a couple months and they'd give you temporary housing and that kind of thing. You do the job and you go back home. You go back home to where you are. I think the best way to avoid this, if you don't want that stuff, is to set yourself up as a remote freelance contract worker. So that means you have a setup at home that's really good. You have a really solid portfolio, website, and you're doing some kind of outreach either on social media or otherwise to connect with people. And that when they call you, you tell them that you are mainly a remote guy working freelance, and if that's acceptable for them, you want to prove to them that you can do the job really, really well, and then you have to come through on your word. You have to really kill it and do a good job. So that's basically what you want to do. If you want to work at these big companies, and hopefully the trend will change now that like the remote working environment is getting more accepted and people are proving that it is actually working really well. But if you want to work at a Disney or DreamWorks or Netflix and stuff like that, you might actually have to move to the studios, and they're mostly in Los Angeles or the big film centers, right? Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York, Vancouver, London. They're all scattered around the world, really. But the major ones are the ones that we know about, are the ones I just mentioned. And yes, you probably have to move close to those places if you want to work in those studios, because otherwise, it's just very difficult to collaborate and communicate. Now, that is changing. So that's a really good positive trend that's happening right now, despite the fact that we're on lockdown with the whole COVID crisis. So there is a silver lining to some of these things, right? But hopefully some of those tips can help. All right, let me answer a couple of these questions, and then we'll jump off for today. So, this is great. So Jason T. Lowe, I believe, hopefully I'm saying your name right, is asking, have you seen the Harold and Lillian documentary? I have not, and I heard about it and I saw some of the promotion for it, but I actually haven't seen that documentary. So if you guys have a link and maybe can share it with us, I'd love to see where we can see it. Is it on Netflix? Is it on Amazon? Maybe we can catch it on some streaming service. But that is at least what I know about, is a documentary about longtime veteran story artists that were working in Hollywood, and they did some of some of the most memorable films. So that I would love to check out. So no, I have not seen that. Anyway, hopefully you can let us know if that one is a good one or not. All right, my friends, I think I'm going to bounce out today. Hopefully this will inspire you to keep drawing and to keep on thinking about some of the methods and the processes that we do as storytellers, and that will feed into the creativity and also keep you employed, keep guys looking at your work and calling you because you're actually doing really cool and interesting stuff. All right, keep working hard, keep on those drawings, and we'll talk soon. All right, thanks guys. See ya.